Hey YouTube, Philly J here from Different Dimension Gaming, coming at you with my Warrock deck profile. So, how do I explain Warrock? It is Tenpai for a fraction of the cost and a fraction of the power. It's just Tenpai if it were bad. It's very cool deck. I love the art. I love the play style. It's not good. You're not going to win anything big with this. You might win a locals with this. You're not going into a YCS or a regionals and doing well with this. Your best bet is catching people off guard and just hitting them really hard over and over and over again. And it's worth mentioning, your extra deck is not important. I have one. I will show it off. You really don't go into it at all. But Warrock. Let's talk about Warrock. Well, let's go through our boss monsters first. We're going to play one copy of Warrock Bashalos, I think is how you say it, and two copies of Warrock Meteoragon. So, Bashalos is kind of, I think, the face of the deck, I think, except for Mammud, which we'll get to. But all the Warrocks have the same effect in the battle phase, where if they battle, all your Warrocks gain 200 attack, and that lasts until the end of the opponent's next turn. So if your opponent attacks them all, they all gain, and they all boost up, and then it lasts until the end of your opponent's next turn. So if your opponent attacks them, they all get a boost, and then when you attack them, they all get a boost again. And when there's 5 of them out, that means each one will give them all 200, which means by the end of the battle phase, if they've all battled, they've all got 1,000 more attack. So it's very cool. So, now for the actual effects, so for Bashalos, during the battle phase in which your Earth Warrior monster battles, that's your whole deck. As a quick effect, you can activate this effect. This card can attack your opponent directly this turn. Also, all Warrock monsters you currently control gain 200 attack until the end of your opponent's turn. So again, it's just that huge boost, and they all get it as long as they're on the field when they gain it. When your Earth Warrior monster is destroyed by battle, you can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. This card has to be in your hand to activate and resolve its effect. You can only use each effect once per turn. Meteoragon, I think, as an entire card, is better because it's got a negate built into it. So it cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. When an attack is declared involving this card and an opponent's monster, you can negate that opponent's monster's effect this turn, as well as the activated effects and effects on the field of monsters with the same original name. So against something like Blue Eyes or Dark Magician, you can just kind of wipe the whole field of negates because all those cards become that monster on the field. And once per turn during a battle phase in which your Earth Warrior monster battles, as a quick effect, you can make all Warrock monsters you control gain 200 attack until the end of the opponent's turn. Also, this card can make up to 2 attacks on opponent's monsters during each battle phase this turn. Now, it's important to know that Meteoragon is a soft once per turn, which means he can boost everything for as many copies as you have on the field. But yeah, these are kind of your boss monsters. I do think that Meteoragon, while having 100 less attack, does more for the deck than Bashalos does. But, I mean, Bashalos looks really cool. For your next ones, we've got one copy of Warrock Skylar and 2 copies of Mammud. So Skylar gains 100 attack for each monster your opponent controls. During a battle phase in which your Earth Warrior monster battles, as a quick effect, you can target one level 5 or lower warrior monster in your graveyard and special summon it. Also, all Warrocks you currently control gain 200 attack until the end of your opponent's turn. Also, for the rest of this turn, you cannot attack directly with level 5 or lower monsters. You can only use each effect once per turn. So again, just a lot of battle trick, battle phase effects that just kind of make everything bigger until the end of the opponent's turn. Mammud, I think, is the face of the deck. I think it's the most popular card in the deck, and I think Farfa is personally responsible for that. He's also personally responsible for the price of Warrock Mountains, so you can blame him for the fact that the field spell in this deck is almost the price of half the deck. So, Mammud. If you control no monsters or all monsters you control are warrior monsters, you can normal summon this card without tributing. If your Earth Warrior monster battles after damage calculation, you can target one spell trap your opponent controls, destroy it. Then all Warrock monsters you currently control gain 200 attack until the end of your opponent's turn. You can only use this effect once per turn. So the normal summon effect is not once per turn, but you only get one normal summon a turn. You could play something like double summon if you just want to kind of spam your Mammuds, which is totally up to you. I'm not doing that, but it's not the worst idea in the world because you've got room to flex with stuff in this deck. But yeah, I do think that Mammud is the face of the deck. For your 3-ofs, we're going to play 3 copies of Gyarados, 3 copies of Fortia, and 3 copies of Wento. And these are all kind of your starters in the deck. Your best starter is Fortia, and your best one to have in hand at the same time is Gyarados. So let's go through them like this. So situated. All right. So Fortia, or Fortia, however you want to say it. If your Earth Warrior monster battles after damage calculation, you can add one Warrock card from your deck to your hand, except for itself. Then all your Warrock monsters that you currently control gain 200 attack until the end of your opponent's turn. If this card is sent from your monster zone to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon one level 5 or higher Warrock monster from your hand or deck, and you can only use each effect once per turn. So Fortia is your normal summon, find whatever you're lacking in your hand as far as your spells go, because I will say this deck has got some surprisingly good spells. Gyarados, if an Earth Warrior monster is normal summoned to your field, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is sent from your monster zone to your graveyard by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon one level 5 or higher Warrock monster from your hand or deck. You can only use this effect once per turn. So the special summon effect from your hand is not once per turn. But I like that each one searches like level 5 or lower, level 5 or higher. They kind of work with each other in that respect. Now Wento is kind of the most unusual monster in the deck in that it's got kind of a hand effect, where if your Earth Warrior monster battles an opponent's monster during damage calculation, as a quick effect, you can pay 800 life points. Your battling monster gains 800 attack until the end of this turn. If this card is sent from your monster zone to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon one level 5 or higher Warrock monster from your hand or deck. You can only use each effect of Wento once per turn. So again, more battle tricks, and the gain 800, I mean, it is only one, but if you can beef up like your Meteor Dragon or your Mammud by 800 after they've already been boosted 800 by the other Warrocks you control, 100% do that, because a 3600 Mammud swinging at you, or a 4400 Meteor Dragon swinging at you, it's kind of horrifying. That's it for your Warrock monsters. It is kind of a surprisingly low count for a battle phase deck. It is only 15, but that's almost the entire Tenpai engine, so. Now we are playing one non-Warrock monster in the Cataclysmic Crusted Calphasidia. Say that 5 times fast. I couldn't even say it once at a normal speed. If a face-up Earth monsters you control is destroyed by a battle or an opponent's card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then you can send one monster from your deck to the graveyard. You can only use this effect once per turn. So this is obviously not a War Rock, but it's a 2600 free summon if your opponent enters the battle phase, which is kind of a bad idea against this deck. Because it's going to keep boosting off of itself and keep boosting off of each other, and they work really well as a team to attack the enemy. And then if your opponent, you could sacrifice something like your Wento attacking, and then you can just bring out a 2600 instead of a 1800 just to get more stats on the board. And it's the only non-warrior monster you're playing in your main deck. For your spells and traps, obviously we're playing 3 copies of Warrock Mountain. When this card is activated, you can add a Warrock monster from your deck to your hand. That's already really good. It's a reinforcement of the army for your deck, which is great, and it's not a level 4 or lower, so you can add any of them that you need to add in the moment. At the start of the battle phase, if you control no monsters, or if all monsters you control are warrior monsters, you can special summon one Warrock monster from your hand with a different name than the cards you currently control. And if your warrior monster would be destroyed by battle, you can send this card to the graveyard instead. You can only activate one Warrock Mountain per turn. And this spell's kind of nuts. In most decks, this spell is one of the most broken cards I've ever read in my life. It searches, it summons, and it protects. This card is phenomenal. It's just stuck in Warrock. Yeah, I like Warrock, but we're in Fire format, and the deck's a little bit slower for Fire format. 3 copies of Warrock Medium. While your opponent controls a special summon monster and you control a level 7 or higher Warrock monster during main phase 1, neither player can activate the effects of monsters on the field. And during your main phase, you can set one Warrock spell trap directly from your deck, except for itself. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn except warrior monsters. You can only use each effect once per turn. So again, really, really good. It's a skill drain in the main phase 1, which is fine because if you do something like Warrock Mountain, search Fortia, summon Fortia, special Gakdos, and you drop medium, you're already done with all your monster effects in the main phase anyways. So it's essentially skill drain, as long as you control a level 7 or higher. Which, again, in this deck is really easy to do, because you could also just activate Mountain, activate Medium, go to the battle phase, summon out Meteor Dragon, and now you've got skill drain online, plus a negate. Again, I cannot stress enough, these cards are surprisingly good. I'm not sure what the deck needs to make it more competitive, but it needs something. And then one of the best cards in the deck is Warrock Dignity. This is your negate for the deck. So you must control a Warrock monster to activate either effect. When a monster your opponent controls activates its effect, negate the effect. So it's imperm. During the battle phase, when your opponent activates a spell, trap, or monster effect, negate that effect. Only activate 1 per turn. So this negates the effect and not the activation, which means if you go to the battle phase and your opponent activates a hard once per turn card, you can just, negate the effect, and now your opponent can't activate another one. Like a lightning, I guess it can't activate lightning. You know what I mean? In the battle phase, your opponent activates a quick play spell card, you go, no, I don't think so, and now they're kind of screwed. A card that negates effect and not activation is very, very good, and I genuinely think this card is incredibly underrated. We're going to play 2 copies of Warrock Spirit. During the main phase, you can target one Warrock monster in your graveyard, then activate one of these effects. Special summon that target in attack position, but for the rest of this turn its effects are negated. Also, it cannot attack directly. Or special summon that target in defense position. Also, the first time each Warrock monster you control would be destroyed by battle, this turn it is not destroyed. So you got battle protection on your opponent's turn, plus all your Warrocks will beef up your guys anyways. And then, if you want, you can go in attack position. Its effects are negated, but if it's something like a Meteor Dragon, you just need that big body to hit your opponent directly, possibly to clear the board, and then you can use something like your Mammud to attack directly. Again, very good spells in this deck, and those are all the Warrock spells that you're running. You can bump Spirit up to 3 if you want. I don't recommend it. I think that 3 kind of makes your deck cloggy, and you really only want to see like these 3 spells without searching for something. For some non-archetype spells, we're just playing, pretty standard stuff. 1 Reinforcement of the Army, 1 Terraforming, 1 Call by the Grave, just standard issue, limited section of the ban list, good stuff cards. For more consistency cards, I'm playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. I cannot stress enough how much your extra deck does not matter in this deck. In fact, it's very rare that you will even go into it. So something like Extravagance, which basically just becomes Pot of Greed in this deck. Because you're not drawing anything else in this deck, it's fantastic. Because it doesn't have the damage to your opponent, which is great because this deck cannot hit as hard as Tenpai, but it doesn't restrict you in any other way except for drawing for the turn. All you have to remember is that you have to activate Extravagance first. And then because this is a battle phase deck and we are going to be going second, I'm playing 2 copies of Lightning Storm and the 1 Harpy's Feather Duster. And just to get rid of your opponent's stuff. You care more about what your opponent has in the back row than the monster zones because you're going to keep beefing up your own monsters through the course of your turn, that you're pretty much okay with your opponent trying to negate stuff, especially if you can bait something with a Pot of Extravagance and they negate that with something like a Solemn Judgment. You go, okay, here's a Lightning Storm, have fun. And then for the only traps in the deck, I'm just playing 1 copy of Warrock Generations and 1 copy of Warrock Big Blow. Because you've got cards that can set them directly from your deck, these are awesome cards to have, because realistically, throughout the course of a duel, you'll only be having 1 or 2 turns anyways. So, for Generations, during the battle phase, if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, special summon 1 Warrock monster from your deck, and if you activated this card during your opponent's turn, for the rest of this turn, while you control the face-up special summon monster, your opponent's monsters cannot attack except that monster. You only activate 1 Generations per turn. So again, you bring out something like your Meteor Dragon, just a big body, your opponent has to attack it. There isn't a card that says your opponent has to attack, but if they're going to attack, they have to attack your biggest guy. And then Warrock Big Blow. During the main phase, if a face-up Warrock monster you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect, destroy up to 2 cards your opponent controls. You can only activate 1 per turn. So this is a card that I have considered bumping up to 2, and you could probably cut something or just go up to a 41 card deck. But, just like Twin Twisters for just cards in general is pretty good. Especially if your opponent does something like a Kaiju or a Dark Hole or a Lightning Storm, whatever, just pop two of their cards, make them pay for getting rid of your stuff. That's it for the main deck. Again, the extra deck is very trivial. It's pretty much just stuff with a couple cards that I think are at least worth considering in the deck. So for rank 4s, we're just going Time Thief Redoer, Blade Armor Ninja, Tornado Dragon, Baguska, Abyss Dweller, and Dugaris the Timeless. Pretty, standard rank 4 stuff with like 2 exceptions in your extra deck in 2024. Dugaris is, detach 2 materials, draw 2 cards. This is the only other draw card in your deck besides Extravagance. Time Thief Redoer is just kind of a funny card to keep taking your opponent's stuff off the top of their deck, possibly giving you draws on your opponent's turn. Blade Armor Ninja can detach a material so that it can attack twice. Tornado Dragon, detach a material as a quick effect, target a spell trap on the field and destroy it. Baguska is just to slow down your opponent, and Abyss Dweller the same thing, just to kind of slow down your opponent. These two cards in one turn pretty much stop most decks dead on the spot. You've got Skill Drain and you've got Necro Valley, which is decent at the very least. We're playing 6 rank 4s and 9 links. Again, extra deck is pretty much whatever you want. For my extra deck, for the links, I'm just playing 1 Access Code, 1 Boral Sword, 1 Zeraboros, 1 Triple Burst Dragon, 1 Decode Talker, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Barricade Borg Blocker, and 1 Ausa the Earth Charmer. So, I mean, you've got a couple battle phase tricks, a negate, another negate kind of, a spin, a pop, recursion from the graveyard, and an Earth Recruiter. It's really all there is to the extra deck. I have played 5 or 6 games with this deck so far. I have gone into the extra deck exactly once, and I went through Ausa and Barricade Blower to get a Boral Sword, just because I had a Meteor Dragon, and I saw attack with Meteor Dragon, attack with Boral Sword, swap the Meteor Dragon, attack with Boral Sword again for game. Simple, simple, simple extra deck that you do not go into very often. We're not doing anything fancy in this deck. We're just hitting our opponent as hard as we can, as many times as we can, within the rules of Yu-Gi-Oh! With that being said, this has been War Rock. Make sure to like and subscribe, join our Discord server, follow us on all the socials, and we'll see you next time.